So what language should you learn when you're just starting with the programming, or like you just want to start a software job, right? So this question is very tedious and it's like very difficult. It's very confusing also, and the answer to this is different from any person you ask, right? Somebody would be asking like recommending Python, somebody would recommend JavaScript, and somebody would say like Java or Ruby and Rails and all. So I would straight away cut to the answer. So the answer for me, like what I would recommend is like JavaScript. And now I'll explain what are the reasons for which you should learn JavaScript as the first programming language, right? So the answer would depend, like would vary depending upon what your final aim is. So first, it's important to have a clear aim that what you want to achieve with the language, right? So if you already know what you're doing, right, you already have a project on hand, then of course, like the language which you'll choose would depend upon like the project which you have, right? Suppose like if you're a mobile app, you'll use something else. Like if you have like a desktop application, you'll use something else. Or if you have a data science application, you'll use something else. So the choice depends what you want to do with the language, right? Uh, but like if you just want to get started with the programming and your aim is to get a software job, then the first language which I would recommend would be JavaScript, right? So and let's look at what type of jobs are currently there in the market, right? The jobs are either you could be a web application development engineer, or you could be a mobile app engineer, or like a data scientist, or there's some jobs for artificial intelligence engineer which have been there like in the last couple of years, or a DevOps engineer, right? These are also like some of the jobs. So each of these needs a different level of skill set and different type of languages or different frameworks that you should know. And also there is a difference in the learning curve for each of these. So the learning curve for web application development is medium. It's not too high. You can learn like one language, few couple of frameworks, right? And like some other basic things about the software architecture and all, you can get started. Mobile apps is also medium, it's not too difficult. Data science is very high, right? So because you along with knowing the basics of the computer science, you need to have like few projects in the belt which are actual real-time projects and all that you've done. And same for artificial intelligence also. DevOps is not too tough. DevOps is fine. It's difficult to get a real-time industry experience with DevOps because DevOps are needed for large-scale projects and all. And also when you talk about teams, so mostly like you'll have like 20% or 10% of the members as DevOps. Rest 80 or 90% of the members would be like web application development engineers in like working on a website or something, right? So there are a lot more jobs for web application development engineers as compared to DevOps. So, so after you finalize what language you want to use, which is of course JavaScript, and the reason, and like I would also recommend taking the path of being a web application development engineer, like when you're just getting started, because that's the easiest path, and you can see the progress day by day. Uh, it is because it is important, like as you're learning, it is important to keep practicing and seeing the results right away, right? Because that keeps you motivated. You can see what progress you're making. You can get your feedback by yourself. So once you are done with learning the basic JavaScript, that alone would help you get a job. You have to learn few more things along with it, which are needed to understand like the full application lifecycle. And the few other things would be, so in a website or web application, the full life cycle involves three things. One is front end, back end, and database. The front end is the part that renders in the browser, which is the HTML, CSS, or and the dynamic part is JavaScript. Like suppose you click on a button, something happens and all. That's the dynamic part. So the elements, the way they are styled and all, that's using CSS, and that all includes the front end, and then there's the back end. So suppose like you go to a website, the website will show results just for you, right? The data just for you. So the back end involves determining who the user is, getting all of that, all of the data for that user, right? Performing some logic on the data and returning it to the browser, so that browser can show all of the data. So that all is done on the back end. So the backend could also be written in JavaScript, and we use a runtime for that, and the runtime is Node.js. So again, like you just use the same language, but you could be writing the server is like the code on the server using the same language. And to store data, you would need a database. So you could use any database, any simplest database. So like RDBMS are very simple databases. You could use like a Postgres of MySQL, or like if you find like MongoDB is also very simple database to use. So you can get started using that also. So after you're done with these steps, like after you've learned JavaScript, after you've learned like some basic things about, after you've done like maybe a single website, you are like a few steps ahead and like closer to getting a job. There would be few more things that you need to learn that you would have to learn even after this. But like this is a considerable amount, and it's a good milestone to achieve. And if you need any help in getting a job, like or making some progress, or you're confused at what should you learn and all to get a software job, let me know, and I would be very happy to help. Write down in the comments below, and I will reply.